we have to start with the serial killer. They've nabbed who they say is a prolific serial killer who was roaming amongst us, who is accused of killing as many as potentially 10, maybe more people. I think he's accused explicitly of 6 or 7 by the authorities right now. And this guy, we've known that there was a serial killer loose in Long Island for quite some time, but we just didn't know who it was. We found the bodies in 2011 dumped near Massapequa. That's where Brian Kilmeade's from. That's where Billy Baldwin's from. It's this nice area of Long Island. And these bodies of young sex workers who went missing, washed up, or not washed up, but were found in burlap bags in 2011. But Arthur, they couldn't figure out who did it until this past weekend. Then when they announced the arrest of this guy, it's unbelievable. I want to get his name. Rex, how do you pronounce the last name?
Heuermann, something like that.
I know. Hold on a second. Heuermann.
I only heard it 100 times.
It's Heuermann. Heuermann. Rex Heuermann. All right. Now, Rex Heuermann worked as a consultant for architects dealing with the city and managing like all the building codes and regulations. And he was, as far as I can tell, like an intermediary who had a good, legit job. Married, he was on a second wife, married, 2 children, living a private life in Long Island. And my team found this interview he gave in 2022 with the host of Bonjour. I don't know, it's some I don't know, Bonjour Realty, some realty YouTuber on Le Interview. And the host spent half an hour with the guy. I watched this whole thing. I watched 20 minutes of this guy talking about stuff I have absolutely no interest in because it's a accused serial killer we now know. And here he is talking in a more private moment at the end, or a more sort of personal moment at the end of the interview about his favorite tool. Watch this, Shot 6.
If you were a tool or an object to help you to bring your business to greater heights, what would it be?
I have one tool that's pretty much used in almost every job, and it's actually a cabinet maker's hammer.
Cabinet maker hammer. Okay.
It is persuasive enough when I need to persuade something.
Not someone.
Something.
Oh my God.
Oy.
Oh my God, you guys. So I'll start with you, Arthur, as the New Yorker. They now say that they caught him in part thanks to DNA, in part thanks to tracking down his burner cell phone he was using to contact the sex workers who wound up murdered. But how do you like the case against him as you've seen it outlined so far?
Well, I communicated with the Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tiernan last night, and he actually told me to send you his regards, Megyn. He's a former Brooklyn ADA who I know. And the prosecutor right before him, Tim Sini, was also a well-known prosecutor, but the word around the campfire is he really dragged his feet in terms of pursuing this. And Tiernan came in, and he's a Republican, and he did just the opposite. He put together this whole task force to figure this out. And it was really a task force of not only just the regular Suffolk County detectives, but also the Suffolk County sheriffs. They brought the FBI back in, and they really made this a priority. But one of the things the district attorney of Suffolk County did say was that technology has advanced so much in the 13 years since the first homicide took place. It really was helpful. And you talk about close, his office, the defendant's office, is like 5 blocks away from my law office in Midtown Manhattan. And that's where he was arrested from. It's also where they recovered the pizza box that had his DNA apparently on the pizza, that they tied all of that in to put the nail in the coffin. They actually still wanted to continue to follow him but he keeps reaching out to sex workers, as they call them. I guess you don't call them prostitutes anymore.
I know. I noticed the same thing. Sex work. It makes it sound like it's like this is a legitimate job that you could choose. Like you could work. You could be like a transportation worker or a sex worker.
Yeah,
they're talking about hookers, ladies of the evening.
Thank you. So they wanted to continue to follow him, but they were too afraid that if he went with one of these sex workers, he was going to kill somebody else. So they actually ended the investigation a little earlier than they wanted to. They wanted to build on their evidence, but they feel comfortable now that they will continue to build on the evidence. And obviously at this point, they feel comfortable that they're going to secure a conviction based on his wife's hair being at the location, and they found out that his wife was out of town at the time in question when one of these women were killed. So they feel like it's all circumstantial evidence. There's no like eyewitness that says it was him. There's one witness that says an ogre-like guy was seen with one of the deceased. And if you look at this 6'6" guy who's clearly overweight, ogre would be an appropriate, he kind of looks a little bit like Shrek.
Good for that DA. Good for them for taking another hard look at it as the advancements in DNA and other evidential, assessment tools is obvious to us all. But they're of no use if you don't actually use them on these crimes. And what better crime to investigate than serial killings, Mark? I'll give you one other. We'll talk more about this evidence, but I'll give you one other soundbite of the guy at the end of his interview with the French guy, where they take like a selfie together. I get the Bonjour Realty guy. I would love to talk to this guy who now knows he spent an hour with a serial killer accused. He does like selfies, I guess, at the end. And just look at him. Watch this.
But in the meantime, it's
Selfie time.
Selfie time. You're fast. Ready?
They're putting on sunglasses.
1, 2, 3. Ah! Can you smile?
That is.
Oh my God,
Megyn,
Mark.
very cringy, Megyn, very cringy.
It's so creepy.
He's guilty, yeah, that would be very creepy. So to answer your question, I approach this case the same way I do other high-profile cases like Koberger or the BTK killer. You take what they're alleging and you say, if everything is true, and that's a big if, sometimes, the DNA isn't supported by the way that they gathered it. It was contaminated, but rarely does that happen. So if what they're saying is true, it paints a serious picture of somebody who did some major damage. And look, anyone could do searches, right? Somebody's concerned, they live in the area. Okay, just doing searches about the case isn't enough. So I go, okay, next. And
because they found his computer searches, which are incriminating from the sound of them. Keep going.
Oh, they're horrible.
Sure.
We'll get into it. Go ahead.
But and you could probably, from the defense lawyer perspective, I'm like, well, I might be able to explain that away. Then you keep adding in different things. And, at some point, you lose the perspective of being able to argue that this could be something else. In other words, the odor of an alcoholic beverage shouldn't convict you of DUI, but you start adding in the slurred speech and the flushed face and the bloodshot eyes and the horrible driving and you can't stand up. Each piece forms the basis of a complete picture. And I think that the picture here, assuming it's true, because we don't know anything and there was a lot of political pressure to solve this case, but assuming all this is true, this is a really tough case. As great of a lawyer Arthur is, I don't know whether you need him or a magician to make all that stuff disappear.
Those searches
all right, so
horrible.
here's some of the searches that they found on his computer. Why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer? I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because it's just gallows humor, but this is so dead on. Why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? Well, hold on a second. Let me give it.
Searches are horrible.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, of course he's into that as well. Long Island serial killer phone call he Googled. Long Island serial killer update. Serial killer update 2022. FBI active serial killers by state 2023. Map of all known serial killers. Unsolved serial killer cases. America's 5 top notorious old cases. Hold on, going down. Then he searched the names of some of the victims: Megan Waterman, Melissa Bartholomew, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and then a couple of other related searches. Cops launch Gilgo Beach Homicide Investigation Task Force, mapping the Long Island murder victims inside the Long Island serial killer in Gilgo Beach. The Gilgo Beach Killer, that was the name of the beach in Long Island. In Long Island serial killer investigation, new phone technology may be key to break in case. So he's obviously very, very interested in his case. And then if you look at like the determining or the disturbing things that Arthur was referencing, I'm not going to get into it, but child pornography involving very young girls, searches like nude slave girls, preteen girls, and so on. And all of the women killed, according to 48 Hours, which I listened to, there's a podcast out right now, which I recommend to everyone, seem to generally have the same characteristics, these young women. And, they were obviously sex workers or prostitutes. That's not to in any way diminish what happened to them, but it's just to get honest about what that term means. They were young. They tended to be brunette. They tended to be small. He liked petite women, like under 5 feet. Many of them had hazel eyes. And so there was a profile. Think of this guy, 6'6", with a 4'11" young woman, Arthur, desperate enough to try to make money in that particular way, who goes on, some hotel call and never resurfaces and winds up strangled. That's how most of these women were killed, in a burlap bag. But he wasn't careful, because you mentioned that hair. They found the wife's DNA on the burlap bags. And as you point out, the wife was nowhere near the scenes. And they found his hair at the bottom of one of those burlap bags. But they didn't have a match. He wasn't in the system. So Arthur, how did they get this guy's name? They have the hair. They don't know whose it is. So how do they zero in on this guy, Rex?
Well, the word they use is triangulation, but that was one of the words I used. I watched that whole long press conference by the prosecutor. Apparently, and then if we really want to lift up the skirt here, the DA's public relations agent was at my house here on Saturday. So he was telling me they've had his name for a long time, a very long time. I think even before this prosecutor came into office, but they just haven't had the links. A lot of it had to do with the burner phones, calling the prostitution, the escort services.
Off of Craigslist.
And they were able to get a judge to give them search warrants. But I think the pizza and getting the DNA off of the pizza was what really gave them the impetus to say, okay, we have enough. I can't emphasize enough. They really did not want to end the investigation, but he was so prolific in his use of prostitutes that they were afraid one was going to, I think the term was
another person
eventually the scales of justice balance in the degree of public safety over securing a conviction.
And then they got enough.
Summer used to mean I was kicking off the sheets every night to try to stay cool. Perhaps you've been there. But that all changed, thanks in part to my discovery of Cozy Earth bedding. I now sleep comfortably, even on those hot, awful nights, and you can too. Simply swap out your current sheets for soft, breathable, temperature-regulating sheets from Cozy Earth, the brand with thousands of 5-star reviews, including my own. If you do not agree that you are sleeping cooler, more comfortably this summer, they will refund your purchase price plus shipping, no questions asked. And you get 100 nights to try them out. How can Cozy Earth make such a guarantee, right? After 100 nights, if you don't like it, send it back in, you get a refund. How? Because their bedding is made from viscose, from bamboo, so it traps less heat, enabling people to sleep cooler, more comfortably year-round. For a limited time, save up to 40% on Cozy Earth. Go to CozyEarth.com, enter my promo code MEGYN at checkout, and that will save you up to 40% off your order. Try them for 100 nights. If you don't sleep cooler, send them on back in for a full refund. CozyEarth.com, promo code Megyn. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.